Hi, this is Maria Nodoff with the Orangevale History Project. Today is April 12th, 2023, and Ken Benedict and I are here to interview Sven Nance, also known as Skip. Sven, what year were you born?
I was born in 1958.
And when did you arrive in California?
In 1963, my father was in the Air Force, and we were transferred from Louisiana, where I was born, to Sacramento, California, to the McClellan Air Force Base.
And when did you move to Orangevale?
I moved to Orangevale in 1979.
And why?
I bought this house on the Saramar Circle with another firefighter. He and I went halves in on it, and then I bought his half of the house out, his interest in the house.
Mm-hmm. And so at that point you were working for the fire department.
I was working for the fire department, yes. I began my career with the Citrus Heights Fire Department in 1975. That's when I went in my first call as a volunteer. Was hired as what they call a resident fireman, where we lived in the stations and were expected to go to school in 1976. And in 1977, I was hired full paid by the Citrus Heights Fire District. And my first assignment as a firefighter was here in Orangevale as a full paid professional firefighter at the station on Hickory Avenue.
And so how long, so you've been doing that quite a while. So the Citrus Heights and Orangevale fire departments are split now, aren't they? Because
well, the Citrus Heights Fire District covered the communities of Citrus Heights, Antelope, Northridge, and Orangevale. So as long as I have been involved with the fire department, the community of Orangevale has been covered by the Citrus Heights Fire District. Then after a series of mergers, we became County Fire, and then in 2000 we became Sac Metro Fire.
Excellent. So what are your memories of firefighting in Orangevale?
Well, it's interesting because when I worked at the station in Orangevale, we still had some part-time firefighters, the resident firefighters. So there were two of us that were full paid, and then the manpower was augmented by these resident firemen that would sleep in the station at night and then go to school during the day. So, and then the medical aid side of the calls, we had the ladies in white, and we had the ladies would respond from home. The calls would be dispatched, and they would have radios in their home, and they would respond from their house. Sometimes they would beat us to the call, depending on the location of the call, and other times we would beat them, but they certainly provided a great service in augmenting the manpower. So we were very thankful to have the ladies in white. And the ladies in white actually started in the early 1900s when the fire crews were responding to a fire and came upon an auto accident, and there was really nobody left to take care of the people at the auto accident that were injured. So the fire chief at the time determined that there was a need for this ladies auxiliary, the ladies in white, and so they would some of them worked for the fire department down at the station on Greenback Lane, and they were like secretaries or clerks, and when a call came in, they would stop what they were doing, put on their white gear, grab their first aid equipment, hop on an ambulance that was parked at the station, and go to the call. So
yeah, that's an amazing story about the ladies in white.
It is, and sadly, a couple of years ago, I went to the funeral for one of the ladies in white, and nothing was mentioned about her career with the fire department, or nothing was mentioned about her time with the ladies in white. And I mentioned to the people afterwards, I said, a whole big important chapter was left out of her, what she contributed to the Orangevale community. Mm-hmm. So during the time I worked for the fire department, I don't remember any major fires here in Orangevale, but there was a significant incident that happened here in Orangevale, and I gave Marilyn a copy of the newspaper article that I still had, and that involved the only firefighter fatality that I'm aware of in the Citrus Heights Fire District. And that happened, they were at a training exercise behind the post office at Greenback and Hazel, and they had a utility ladder that was actually mounted to the rig. It was like what you'd find on a phone truck or cable truck. And they had the aerial ladder up, and it was only like a 35-foot ladder. And they were squirting water out of the end of it, and somehow or another a component failed, and the ladder went over backwards and threw the firefighter into the wall of the post office, and he eventually succumbed from those injuries. And that happened right here in Orangevale, and I would guess that was probably around 1974, 1975.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
Just awful. So were there any dramatic fires that you remember?
Not really here in Orangevale. I happened to be off duty, but I do remember in the late 70s, there were a series of church fires here in Orangevale. And I never responded to any of those fires, but there were a series of church fires, I think an arsonist that...
Mr. Riley was talking about that, I think.
Who was?
Mr. Riley, Bob Riley.
Oh, yeah. Do you know? Okay.
We just interviewed him.
Oh, great.
And he also mentioned a hay fire at Sicardi's.
Okay, and I was not on that, but...
That was, well, I shouldn't say amusing, but he said it took a while to
I'm sure.
put out because I guess it kept starting. Mm-hmm. He says as hay fires will do. So, any other recollections of your years as a firefighter here? Not really in Orangeville, but this is an interesting time because on this on the 28th of April coming up, it will be the 50-year anniversary of the Antelope train explosions. And certainly the Orangevale community was impacted either by some structural damage or units from Orangevale responding out to the Antelope switching yards for this major incident when I believe it was a boxcar. The brakes were hot. It eventually caught the boxcar on fire. Many boxcars were loaded with 250-pound bombs that were heading to Contra Costa that to be used in Vietnam. And instead, the bombs detonated here in Antelope. And KCRA Channel 3 has great archived film of that incident and so forth. So, wow. And like I said, while that incident didn't take place in Orangevale, certainly it did have a impact on the Orangevale area, either via structural damage or all the units from Orangevale or some of the units were responding out to the train yards. So I bet.
I heard some of them go off.
Did you?
Back then, yeah. Didn't know what it was, but
right.
They were loud booms.
Wow.
Well, and I thought our house had been hit by a car or something. We lived down on Greenback Lane, and it was quite all day long on that Saturday, the 28th of April, 1973. The bombs detonated and destroyed the train yard, obviously, houses around it, and for years afterwards, they still found bombs, embedded down in the tracks in the train yard. So,
wow. That is dramatic. Were there fatalities?
No. Oddly enough, then that's a great question, and I think that's something that the Red Cross community, the law enforcement community, the fire service community is very proud that there were no fatalities from that incident.
That's amazing and wonderful. Yeah.
So then I would just go on to say, because you and I have talked a little bit, I retired from the fire department in January of 2009, and then right after that was started, I've had the honor, privilege, and pleasure of being a volunteer at Casa Roble High School and have developed many friendships, been involved in a lot of activities there. Excuse me. I've been involved with the WASC, which is the school accreditation, the every 15-minute program, sat in on senior boards at CASA, and then most of my volunteer time has been around the athletic department and I got my start under Coach Ryan when he was the head coach, working the chain crew, and then some baseball announcing and working some basketball games. And I still do that to this day. So.
Are you still enjoying it?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
good.
I do. I'm trying to step away a little bit because it does get very labor intensive during the football season and so forth. And fortunately, Coach Horner, the now head coach, has enlisted other help. But I can feel it's starting to get my time maybe to just step back a little bit. So.
Well, will you talk about a little bit about the every 15-minute program?
Yeah. Oh, can I talk? Yes, absolutely. That's a program at the school where it's a multi-agency endeavor that involves trauma centers at the hospitals, this California Highway Patrol, Metro Fire, the school, and I'm sure I'm leaving out somebody, but that's where they staged an accident out on the football field that was supposedly caused by a drunk driver. And there are major injuries, the coroner's department plays a role in it. Excuse me. And they stage a major multi-vehicle accident that involves extrication, life flight, and transporting of people to hospitals, coroners. The students are taken away from their parents overnight, at least just what it's like to have your child missing. So it's a very emotional program.
And I believe some of them are booked into jail.
Yes, absolutely, because usually the person that's caused the accident was driving under the influence, so.
Very, very dramatic. And,
Yes.
And
They haven't done it in a few years at CASA, and maybe part of that was because of COVID. And also, too, it's a major undertaking to get all these agencies involved, so.
I've seen some schools where they'll send someone dressed up as the Grim Reaper
Yeah, and they go
into a
around,
classroom
right.
and pull a student.
they do that at CASA too. It's
They stage obituary, the kid writes, the student writes an obituary, and, they have it like a makeshift graveyard at the school, so.
yeah, it's. I think it really affects the students too. I think.
Absolutely.
I'm not only the ones who are involved, but the ones who watch it, because the entire school's in the stands,
Right.
watching this thing, and it's very affecting.
I know the last one I went to, the young lady that they had play the role of the drunk driver, she was amazing as far as stumbling around slurred speech, not realizing what she had done, and, it was, she did a marvelous job, so.
Any other things you want to talk about at CASA? Were you at dances or the prom?
I have gone into the dances and the proms, and it's mainly because I enjoy being around the kids. Well, that's the main reason, the only reason really to be involved at the schools. I enjoy the time with the kids and so forth. It took me a while to realize that not every student's going to think I'm the greatest thing to come along since sliced bread, but and sometimes with the football players, we have a little butting of the heads, but it's like a marriage. At the end of the day, you kiss and make up, and everything's fine. So it's been a very rewarding experience being around a number of coaches and at the various sports. But just getting back to the kids, I feel so fortunate because I've made, I don't know if exaggerating, but hundreds and hundreds of friends over the years at CASA since I've been involved there since around 2009, 2010. So, and obviously you don't remember every one of them, but they how should I say,
They leave an impression on you.
yeah, absolutely. And the memories, I don't remember each and every incident, but certainly I can think back to some encounters with kids that I will always remember. In fact, can I tell you about one? I was sitting in on a senior board and in Miss Bartholomew's classroom, and this girl was doing something with cooking, and she told me afterwards, and I'm glad you asked this question, because after the senior board, she came up to me and she said, "Skip, I was so nervous about my senior board, but when I saw you walk in, I knew everything was going to be okay." And that is my most cherished memory from CASA's, when that student came up and said, "When I saw you walk in, I knew everything was going to be okay." And I mean,
That is lovely.
yeah, thank
That is
you.
lovely.
So,
What do you think was your, can you recall a football season that was much more exciting, or maybe the most exciting football season?
and I'm probably don't have the year correct, but it was before COVID, and it was a year when we went to the semifinals of the section, and we lost to Rio Linda out at Whitney High School. It was such a fun season in so many different ways. Coach Horner was the head coach, and it was just such an exciting time and exciting season that it's one that I will never forget. And we made it that far to the semifinals. Before I actually got involved at CASA, Coach Ryan had a team that won the section championship, and I think that was 2008, 2009, somewhere along in there. Well, it had to have been before I got involved, so I think it was the 2008 team that won the section championship.
Let me see. I don't want to embarrass you, but you did win an award just recently at Best of Orangevale.
Yes, and I paid big money to get that award. That award cost me a lot of money to pay to various people. No, I'm just joking. No, I was very honored to receive one of the Hometown Hero Awards. Just at the most recent banquet in January, and there's so many deserving people, so many people contribute in so many different ways to this community of Orangevale, but somehow or another they landed on me, and so it was a distinct honor, privilege, and pleasure to get that award.
Excellent. Anything else you want to talk about?
Can't really think of anything. No, it's I'm trying to think of any major incidents in the fire service, and they're not really nothing. I mean, we talked about the one sad incident, and then my time at CASA. So I think that's pretty much it.
How has Orangevale changed since you've been here?
Well, that's a good question. When I first started working for the fire department, you know, there were really just the major streets that ran east, west, Greenback, Central, Elm, Oak Avenue, and then going east, Kenneth, Almond, Hickory, Beech, Hazel, Pecan, Filbert, Chestnut, Walnut, Maine. But now so many of those lots have been subdivided to smaller properties that now there are a lot more streets, fewer fields, more houses, you know, and so I do remember one training exercise that they made us do out here in Orangevale, and I'm sorry if this is too disjointed.
No, it
but
doesn't matter.
The rates that people pay for their fire insurance is dependent upon the efficiency of the fire department covering that area, if that makes sense. So the more efficient that the fire department is, the less that the customer or taxpayer has to pay in insurance premiums. Well, when I first started in the fire department, that whole area north of Casa Roble High School, Golden Gate, Cherry, Peerless, Granite, all those streets out there were absolutely no fire hydrants. And the only water that we had is what we brought with us. And so we were expected to be able to maintain a 250-gallon-minute flow out of a hose for 20 minutes. And the only way we could do that is by doing a water shuttle. A rig would come in, start flowing the water, another fire rig would show up, essentially dump its water into that tank, and then that rig would pull off and go and refill. Somebody else would be behind it, and you had to maintain this flow for 250 gallons a minute for 20 minutes. And if you could do that, it lowered the taxpayer's insurance rate from a 10 all the way to an 8. But I guess that was a major savings. So that's one of the memories I have of being at the fire service here in Orangevale, was helping and participating in those drills in the late 70s. So
Well, you'll be happy to know, Skip, there's a fire hydrant on Cherry now.
yay, yes. Well, I'm sure there are several out there now.
Yeah.
And but at the time, there were no fire hydrants out there. And we had a similar area out in the Antelope area where there were no hydrants. And you never knew when this ISO, they're called Insurance Services Organization that grades fire department. You never knew when. You knew they were in the area grading the fire department in a number of areas, but you never knew when or where they would hold this surprise drill on this water flow. So,
Well, that is fascinating. Yeah, I guess we didn't have a hydrant that I can think of on Cherry until our neighbors built a new house, and that was in 97, and they put a hydrant in there, so that's good.
and I learned something. Are you from when I was at the Marilyn and another fireman and I had coffee with her one morning. And I learned that morning that the Orangevale Water Company, these names of these streets, Central Main, are named after the water mains. I did not know that until that. So.
Yes, they've done quite a bit of work with the water company, and they have wonderful archives.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Let us look at.
And of the old wooden water mains and so forth. And it's interesting. I think they still spell their company Orange Vale. Yeah, and not Orangevale, all one word, but Orange Vale, and stuff. So
Another man we interviewed mentioned the water mains, saying that they were doing some work, and there was a main, an old main. It was made out of redwood.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anything else? Have we forgotten anything, Ken?
I can't think of anything else.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, thank you so
No,
much.
thank you. I'm sorry if I didn't provide a lot of meaningful information.
No, you did.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yes, everybody does.
Okay, thank you.